I'd like to introduce you now to our Plan Like a Boss presenters. It's Meghan Kahler and Amanda Secen. And Amanda and Meghan are financial planners representing Northwestern Mutual, a financial service company founded in 1857 that is regarded as a trusted advisor in the financial service industry. After the presentation, we'll have them address your questions. And thank you again all for coming this evening. We at Women in Film San Francisco Bay Area really appreciate you. And if you're not already a member, please, we'll put the website at the end, and Diane will also give you that information. So I would like to hand it over to Amanda and Meghan. Thank you both so much for coming this evening.
Of course, we're so excited to be here. All right.
Absolutely.
Meghan, do you want to go first to introduce yourself or me?
You can go first.
Okay. So my name, like Julie said, is Amanda Secen. I'm actually based in Kentucky. And so I am actually on Cherokee land here in Kentucky, in Lexington specifically. But I actually used to work in film and did a lot of live television broadcasts before I became into the financial planning space. So working with women in this industry is very near and dear to my heart because I've seen the struggles. I know what freelance life is like. I know just the work environment. I've seen it, I've experienced it myself. So I really have a passion working with women in this space, especially and now in the financial space, just because I've been there and I've done it before. So that's me, Amanda. And I'll let Meghan introduce herself really quickly.
So I'm Meghan. My practice is an all-female practice in Pennsylvania. And I really do quite a lot of these like women empowerment plus education pieces, because I feel like as we go through some of the things today, you'll find our culture or history as women is relatively short. And some of it may be frustrating. Don't worry, it frustrated Amanda and I as we learned all these facts. Like, are you kidding me? But we're going to go through behind that with like, hey, how do we change some of these things? How do we grow faster? And how do we become just as well informed as our male counterparts have been for hundreds of years, centuries, however long you want to think that they've been in charge of the dollars, So I think it'll be some interesting facts for you, but I think it'll also be some really nice things to see where we're heading in the future and how do we get there.
We just wanted to say we're so excited to be here for this webinar. I want to say it's the third or fourth. It's not the fifth yet, I don't think. But I believe this is
probably the fourth.
I think it's the fourth as well. This is the fourth one that we've done. So we're really excited to be back right before the holidays. I know hopefully things are kind of slowing down, but it just seems like this is still a crazy time of year. But as Meghan said, today we're going to kind of talk about really how to use money to empower yourself. We're going to talk about or you can see from the title there, who's going to stop us. And we want you to feel informed, but also empowered through your money. For so long, women we weren't able to inherit land, things like that. And we're going to kind of go through where we've come from and just some important history points to show where we are today and then where we're going to go in the future. So let's see. Yeah. So who's going to stop us? That's our kind of a title for our webinar today. Okay, there we go. We're in the presentation mode.
Awesome.
So we're going to talk about a couple of points in history first, because it's going to give some context to where we are today. So first of all, 1839 is the first time that women can hold property. I actually was kind of shocked to learn this fact. I thought it was going to be a little bit later, to be honest. I thought it was going to be in like the 1900s or something, but women could own property for the first time in 1839. And that's really huge, because before that, it had to be held in a husband's name, brother's name, father's name, whatever. So this is really huge for women, that we can now own property, which in turn will help us grow our wealth. Next step, 1916, first women's clinic is opened. This is another important point in our history to point out, because this is the first time that there's an actual physical doctor clinic for just women. There's this, I forget, what was the statistic? It was at 30 to 50%.
30
Of
to
women.
50% of the time.
Women are misdiagnosed when it comes to treatments or when it comes to ailments. And so because of that, a lot of times that puts a big financial burden on us, because we're continually having to go to doctors because they can't figure out what's wrong, and that can create a huge financial strain on us. So that's why that point is important. Next, 1917, first female politician. Guess what? She couldn't vote for herself, but other people could vote for her. So she was voted into office, but when she couldn't even vote herself, which I think is just absolutely wild. 1920, the right to vote comes around, so we can finally start using our voices as women, especially when it comes to different politicians, things like that. So we can start getting different policies in place that, you know, not favor women, but to give us just equal rights that the men have. 1948, women can serve in the military full time. This came about because of World War II. All the men left to go fight World War II in Europe and other countries. Who were left to build the planes? Us. So because of World War II, they realized, hey, you know what? Actually, women can serve full time. Now, it wasn't a limited capacity. They could, I don't think they could be in full combat and things like that, but they were allowed to serve in the military. 1968, women can serve on a jury. So if you were a woman before 1968 and you committed a crime, you were not heard by a jury of your peers, because women could not serve on a jury. The argument was that a woman's constitution could not handle what went on in the courtroom. But in 1968, finally, a woman can be seen by a jury of her peers if she has to go to court for something. 1969, women can be accepted into Ivy League schools. So now we can get that really high-end education just like our male counterparts can. We're no longer not allowed to get that education. Let's see, which one I went. 1972, first female CEO is in place. So now women are starting to run companies and show, hey, we can do this, and we are going to do it. 1972, the ERA is established. And actually, Megan told me this fun fact today that it actually wasn't voted into, I don't know what the
It
correct term.
wasn't ratified in
Right.
Virginia until 2020.
The ERA. So we've come a long way, but still we've got a little ways to go. 1974, women can open a bank account on their own. They don't need a husband or brother or a father or an uncle or a cousin, a male, to assign, basically kind of co-sign a bank account for them. This is huge when it comes to women and money, because now women can have their own bank account and have control of their own finances. They don't have to worry about a male counterpart coming in. But this also shows, like, it's barely been 50 years that we as women have been able to own bank accounts on our own. And so for centuries, like Megan said, we just haven't needed or been allowed to know a lot of stuff around money. So being able to have a bank account opens that door and that window. And we got a lot of learning to do, not that it's a bad thing, but just to put in perspective, we haven't had financial freedom for that long in retrospect to history for thousands of years that we've been around. So this is huge. 1978, maternity rights. I'm not going to go into that one because that's just a rabbit hole, but that did come around in 1978. And then in 2013, women can serve in active combat in the military. So we're just doing this as a quick history lesson to show how far we've come. And when Megan and I were prepping for this webinar, I think I said something to the effect of, wow, like she said, our history is short, but wow, we've come such a long way, but we still have so much to go. So all of these points have led us to where we are today to empower us through our money, so we don't have to rely on male counterparts anymore. Megan, if there's nothing you wanted to add, I guess we can go to the next slide.
I just like to add this little fun fact. My grandmother couldn't own her own bank account for 31 years of her life.
Yeah.
That's a long time. Like, she was a full adult. She had 2 kids and a husband, and she couldn't have a bank account. So just some interesting facts to see how far we've come in such a short period of time.
All right, so we still have a lot of challenges. There's still a wage gap. If the average is a woman gets paid 82 cents for every dollar the male counterpart makes. I understand this kind of changes based on industry and things like that. Some industries it's worse, some it's better, but the national average is around 82 cents for every dollar a male makes. Again, going back to 30 to 50% of women are misdiagnosed. We still do have a lack of representation. You still don't see as many women in leadership roles or in other roles that men are. Also, women, we need to feel about 80% sure about something before we'll do it. Men, they're like, hey, if I feel 30% sure about something, I'm going to do it. So men take more risks than women. Manufactured fear. Megan, I'm going to let you explain this one.
So when you think about the 2 types of fear, right? There's fear that keeps me safe, right? Like, oh no, there's a cheetah. I don't want to be eaten, right? Those are the fears that are instilled in us. And then there's manufactured fear, right? Manufactured fear falls into almost propaganda-based things. Don't do that. It's not ladylike. You can't do that because you're a woman. And lots of different things that we've just had like ticked on years over years, generation over generation, that we didn't really know was creating that. But we have this man-made fear about, well, don't necessarily be exactly you because it might not be ladylike enough. It might deter somebody. You might be taking up too much space. I'm fearful of what they'll think of me. Those are kind of the manufactured fears that we allow to live in between our ears.
Yeah. And lastly, we right now only own about 32% of the wealth. Megan, do you know, is that globally or is that just in the United States? I think
Globally.
It's globally. Okay. So globally, we only own 32% of the wealth. Now, I mean, that's definitely better than in years past, and it's going to change in future years, but we're still only at 30%. So most of the wealth is still controlled by men. Megan, if there was nothing you wanted to add, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so Megan, I'll let you take over this slide.
So how do we make changes, right? How do we change owning 30% of the wealth? How do we change the perceptions of being misdiagnosed, right? I don't know if you've ever been to the doctor and they're like, oh, you're okay. Go take 4 ibuprofen every 4 hours, where I then see my partner go for the same thing and they're like, here's a cortisol shot, very different based on similar pains, but different diagnosis. And you see that happen to women a lot. And then once you add more defining factors like women of color, that expands even further, right? So there's 2 ways that we can change these things, right? Rage against the machine. And we see some of that happening again, right? Rallying, protesting, activism, right? and then build a new machine, right? Your machine is broke and I'm not going to play on it anymore because it's not working for me, right? So what do? You go build a whole new machine. And so a great example, does anybody here know the name Margaret Rutkin? No, nobody. All right. So who likes Pepperidge Farm cookies? Anybody? Yeah, a couple. So Margaret Rutkin is actually the original owner and the creator of all those favorite Pepperidge Farm things that we know and love, right? So Margaret's husband became ill. They owned a farm. And so what she started doing is on the farm, she also started creating baked goods that she would take to markets and sell under Pepperidge Farm, which is the name of their farm. As they started to grow, Margaret started to hire women, and predominantly women, and they would do work on the farm, they would bake, they would clean. But one of the biggest things was she let them design their own schedule that fit their family. So if they had children that they maybe needed to be with during the day, and then they would come work in the evening, they were allowed to build that schedule. If they were, say, younger and wanted to work during the day, that way in the evenings and afternoons, they could go be a part of the social scene, they could. She did lots of things where she built this room for women to be in, to get paid in, and to have benefits in for the first time in their lives. So one of the really fun things is they called it the Real Housewife of Pepperidge Farm. Like, that's her, that's all her employees. Lots of them were housewives. That's why they built those schedules, right? But she was the first person to just actively give women fair paying jobs. So when you're thinking about
Sorry.
and their own schedule, yeah, that's a huge thing, because some of them had kids and husbands and etc. And so they needed that flexibility. So she found a machine that didn't work for her anymore, and she went and built a new one, right? And what a great example for so many of us who also own businesses. Like, my practice runs very similarly. I only have female employees. I'm not allowed to say I don't want to hire men because that's like illegal, but I have only hired female employees to this point. That is the only people that we have found fit these positions. My employees make their own schedules that fit their family and their lifestyle. And as long as the work gets done, that's what's important. And I actually really pride myself on being an employer that pays my employees a living wage above and beyond, and then benefits, which in my area doesn't always happen for working moms where I live in Pennsylvania. So what a great example of building a new machine. So some opportunities we have in the world to make some shifts and changes, right? One is be open and honest with each other. I found as I started my practice, women would be very quiet and people, but like, can I ask you a question? Right? And as soon as they saw it was a safe, open place, they asked questions, they found the answers they actually needed, and they understood what they were utilizing and why, which makes you much more financially strong if you understand why you're utilizing something, right? Big thing, in the next 30 years, we will go from owning 32% of the world's wealth to owning 70% of the world's wealth. Two reasons why. One, we're actually allowed to build wealth for the first time for ourselves, right? The wage gap is closing in smaller and smaller, and women are some of the best investors. We are most of the time not emotionally tied to our portfolio. So we know it might ride that roller coaster and it'll come back around, but our self-worth is not tied to that portfolio, where our counterparts sometimes their self-worth is tied to that that portfolio, that dollar amount, the checking account total, right? Women haven't had money that long. We're really just not that tied to it for it to mean our self-worth, right? Be open to new ventures that previously scared you, right? Women have to be 80% sure something is successful before we will make that risk. Whereas our male counterparts only need to be 30% successful. Women, when you look at the statistics, they're more efficient, they're better listeners, and they often do jobs better than men because they're more efficient, they listen better, they understand what it is actually going to require to complete that task, right? Be frank about what you deserve. If you see a gig and you're offered a gig and you do not think it pays you enough, do not take that gig. Be worth your value, right? If somebody came to me and said, Megan, I'll pay you $10 an hour to do this, I would be like, that's hilarious. Have a nice day. Thank you for the laugh. And keep it moving, right? Know your worth. My office, we don't keep a swear jar because I'd be out of money really fast. But we have a sorry jar. Stop apologizing for the space that you take up in this world. Do not oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. I was really exhausted and I caught myself just saying, I'm sorry everywhere. And I was like, what am I doing? That's not even something to say I'm sorry for, right? So stop apologizing for the space you take up in this world. Know that one, there's enough air for us all to breathe. So don't worry, you can take up as much as you need, right? Give and support opportunities to other women, right? We all rise in high tides. So the more we can support each other and create a collective space, again, there are generations before us that there was only room for one woman in the room. Whereas most of us now have kicked in the door and said, there's room for all of us. We're not doing that anymore, right? So give support and be there. Be the beacon that you wish you saw, right? Amanda and I are in male-dominated sectors, right? I'm the only female in my office on a day-to-day basis. And it's been like that for about 5 years, almost my entire career, right? But I'm here, and as I spend more time here, there are more women that show up like Amanda and lots of our other friends in this world that we start going, no, we can be a part of this. We are going to do this. And we do it well, right? And be open to the education. Education to new things can be scary. Doing something new and different can be scary, but it will often reap and benefits, right? If we understand how to utilize something, well, and we utilize it and it makes our life better, that was worth the risk, right? So the biggest piece around what we can do, right? Because nothing goes wrong when women have more money. Everybody should think that way. There's no reason for women not to have more money. Making the most of your money and the most of your wealth is important to understand because this arena has shifted. As women take up more space in the financial world, what's important in the financial world has shifted, right? If you came 10 years ago, you might hear an advisor talk about the rate of return and the yield of your portfolio, right? And that's about it. They wouldn't ask you, what do you want the money for? What are you going to do with it? How soon do you need it? What could this change in your life? Planning has shifted and is continuing to shift into much more of a purposeful planning. Less about well, what is my rate of return that you can get me? And how can you help me make the most expansive resources so I can make the things I want happen in life happen? I want my dreams to come true. How can we make that work? So when you think about growing wealth, how you invest your money will impact your ability to achieve goals. Some goals are more important than others, right? For some, it's going to be, I want to give my kids education. Some, it's going to be like, I want to take a super dope vacation every single year. Some people are going to be like, I want to build multiple resources that create more money. So I might have multiple different businesses or properties, just different things running at all times, right? Different goals will impact your investments differently. So when we think about retirement savings, right, for you guys, if you're gig workers, you're probably not going to have a 401k or a Roth 401k. There are some other options. You do have the opportunity for a solo 401k, which you could do traditional or Roth. Those are a little more expensive, but sometimes they're worth it if you're already in a high income bracket and you would like some tax-free dollars for the future. But other options would be IRAs, such as we've talked before about the SEP and the Simple and things of that fashion, how to tuck away dollars for yourself in the future, right? But when you think about being financially empowered, there's really a strategy, right? And there's 12 things that you want to figure out over the course of while you're planning, right? What does my base income need to be? I need no less than X to make my life happen every single month. That's your base income, right? Desired income is like, my base income is what I have to make. My desired income is what I want to make, right? So say I'm literally just pulling these numbers out of this guy, $60,000 a year to live, but I make $100,000, right? That's my valued worth. Your valued worth could be much higher. I literally just pulled those numbers out of this guy, right? That difference in between those, that's your income gap. It's a gap in between your base need and your desired need, right? Building cash reserves. These are so important because what happens in a down market? Opportunities and emergencies. Well, when you're in a down market and an opportunity or an emergency happens to you in your life, where do you go take those dollars from? Right? Well, we probably don't want to take it from an invested account if it took a 20% haircut. That's not where we want to go. We probably want to go to a cash reserve of some type, a money market, a CD, short-term bonds, accumulated value, which is kind of the best well-kept secret by the wealthy, right? Accumulated value earns a dividend. It's technically life insurance, but you can access those dollars anytime that you like while you're here on the earth with us. It's not solely about I'm leaving legacy, right? Those are all great places to have cash reserves. Your cash reserves over time should be about 15 months worth of your income gap. 2 times your desired income, right? And then when you go into retirement, you're going to look for 2 to 10 years of your income gap, right? Most people aren't there in that space yet, but when you go to retirement, you want to make sure that if something happened, like right now, if you're retired and you do not have a game plan for a down market, you're just taking for a loss, which means you're just giving up dollars for the funsies, right? The third space we typically see that we start working in is investments and then distribution flexibility. Flexibility is important when it comes to money, because let me be honest, really very few things in this world are set in stone, especially in finances. If you don't like something, you can usually change out of it, right? We have lots of different resources. As you can see, these all look like little faucets, like little faucet handles. And that's intentional because depending on what's happening on the world would depend on where I would turn a faucet knob for a client. And that's how they would create money above their base income that they needed. Managing human aspects of personal planning. That's a fun way of saying, how do we manage ourselves when we have Chicken Little moments? The market tumbles out of the sky, and what do? Most people's initial reaction is to jerk and pull it out. But that's not actually what we want to do. We actually want to let it hang and ride its ride and let it finish the roller coaster, right? But we have to have this flexibility piece to be able to let it ride that roller coaster. Managing our personal and human aspects of planning is managing our own mindset, right? Preparing for healthcare costs. If you're self-employed, we need healthcare. How do we pay for that? How will we do that? What resources can we use? Things of that fashion, right? Managing tax brackets. We've talked about this fun stuff before if you've been on it, right? Our tax brackets, they're pretty comfortable at 22 and 24. When you jump into the next one at 32, that one's a shocker and it's not fun. So managing those tax brackets, which is what you can do with a financial professional, is go through and see, okay, I'm going to make this much money. What can I do to manage my tax bracket? Manage a sequence of returns, right? If you go into any scenario and want money and you have a couple of bad years in the market, well, your sequence of returns are going to be kind of jacked because you took out during a loss. So we always want a strategy to pull money if the market's down, because then you can go back around and filter it back in when the market is up, right? And out of every 10 years, you're probably going to have 3 down years. Efficient income and cash distribution process, right? This is why you want a professional. I had a client call me yesterday and say, I want to cash out my RSUs, right? And we went through what that distribution process looks like and what would that cost her in taxes, right? Because not everybody realizes that RSUs are income. And if you don't take them when they vest, well, then they could have long-term capital gains on top of them. And well, what do you do if you take them when they vest? All that kind of fun stuff, right? Financial professionals can walk you through that step by step. Asset creditor protection guidance. What happens if I get sued? Right? I don't hold up a contract. I'm a gig worker. I don't want to do this anymore. I leave a contract. Somebody sues me for not doing what I'm supposed to do, right? How do we manage that? Well, there's different assets we can have money in that creditors can't touch. We also have things like an umbrella policy that saves a lot of clients' butts over the years of something happening and going wrong, right? We usually want to talk about legacy.
Sorry,
building
don't
things.
in.
What's that?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Someone had a question what an RSU was, what you were talking about earlier.
Restricted share unit. So it is essentially a company will pay you, and they don't call it stocks, but they call it a share unit, right? They'll pay you in these share units as like a bonus or as a pay increase, and then it takes a certain amount of time for them to vest, right? So they may want you to be there for the next 5 years. So if you leave before the next 5 years, you actually don't get them. Things like that. There are ways for companies to pay you in a fashion, but with a strategy that they're paying you with the value of their company. So you'll see some people keep them because they work for a company that they feel is either going to be very, very valuable, or they know is on an uphill trajectory. And some people just take them because that's the way they've structured some of their comp, but the company is not really going anywhere special. Does that answer that question? It's essentially paying you income without paying you income. Awesome. So, legacy. We build things. Who do we want to have them after we're not here, right? Do we want our dogs to have everything we've built? Is it going to be as a nonprofit? Is it going to be our loved ones? Whatever it might be, but having a strategy, knowing where the assets are going and organizations that you love and you wanted to go to, because lots of states have probate and have pretty strict probates, and lots of states even have it where if your stuff goes through probate without any type of will, the state keeps part of your assets. Super fun fact, Prince did not have a will. He did not have instructions at all. And then obviously if you are creating generational wealth, for family, understanding that relationship you build with your advisor, then they work to build that same relationship with your family and keep that same level and care of your plan going forward. So, in my opinion, there's two ways to invest money, and that's strategic and crock pot. Crock pot is exactly what you think. You get up in the morning, you put it in your crock pot. And I live in Pennsylvania, so these are super, super popular. Everybody, like, they have like 5 crock pot meals a week here. You throw everything into a crock pot, you come home and it's all done, right? You didn't have to do anything. Nobody had to watch it, kind of a scenario. And that's considered diversification in the investing world. And what it means is I have a little bit of all the asset classes. So I'm never top dog and I'm never biggest loser, right? And then the other way is through strategic, right? If you've been keeping up on things, we know that last week the market had a fun time, but we also know that international funds went absolutely ham, right? And so they really had a good time. So if you had the opportunity to buy them while they were low in the last, 6 to 12 months, and then you just saw this huge run up from them, well, that's a strategic buy. You can sell it off and then go purchase something else that's low. You see this happen. Most people understand this through real estate. The real estate market goes down. It's now a buyer's market versus a seller's market. You can buy a home at a reduced cost. You keep that home as a rental income or flip it and then sell it eventually for a higher value than you paid for it. I find it very intriguing, right? Like as women, because we are so new to this world that we are actually better investors. I honestly thought when the markets crashed and my friends and other firms were coming up to me and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, are you okay?" And they'd be like, "I'm hanging in. I fielded 60 client calls today." And I'd be like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, like, because the market's down." And I was just like, damn, I'm a good advisor. I'm not getting these calls. Like my clients get it. Because when the markets do fall, I do call my clients. Do you have any questions? How do you feel about this? Lots of my clients were like, we get it, no problem. Some clients even picked up the phone and said, this is when we give you more money, right? And I was like, oh, people have been listening. And then I realized after reading a few studies is that, yes, I am a good advisor, don't get me wrong, but I would say 95% of my clients are women. And women are better investors, and women do not get their feathers as much in a bunch when they see a down market. My clients that call me are never my female clients. They're always my clients that are men. I had one call me the other day and try to disguise it as if his wife was nervous. And I was like, your wife texts me about like hair care products. She would have definitely texted me about this. I knew he was just uneasy himself. And he just didn't want to be like, yeah, I'm uncomfortable. Can you please talk me off this ledge?
So it is a very volatile time, as you're saying, Megan, and I do think there are a lot of people that are super insecure. Is there something that you do feel at this time, you know, bonds, like what is it that you are suggesting that people invest in if they have a little bit of wealth that's extra that they would like to move around?
Sure. So there's not a one size fits all, right? If some advisor comes and tells you this is the next hot thing, they're full of shit. Sorry. They're full of it, right? That's not necessarily a thing, right? If you would have asked me a year ago, what is everybody asking me about? I would have told you cryptocurrency. Every meeting I was in, somebody was asking me about crypto. But look what's happened in the most recent times, like FTX. Either were hacked and taken advantage of, or ran off with millions of dollars from people. Depends on what news source you read. Will depend on the story you get. But something very similar happened in Canada with another cryptocurrency, and people were out millions of dollars, right? There's no regulation. FTX was accused of commingling client dollars with high risk investments. That's a huge no-no to the SEC, right? Like that's a big no-no. So they're not regulated. So when you think of like, where can I stash some dollars? I would say like probably a mutual fund is probably a safe bet. You get a lot of different things for a smaller buy-in. And you can buy a mutual fund from pretty much any resource, right? Having a planner just does really become helpful because they can filter it out to you full plan on what's the best fit. I think Nicole has her hand up.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start investing in stocks, but I don't know where to begin or how to start. And I don't want to do it online. I want to actually like be face to face or at least talk to someone.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Know that I mean, at least at Northwestern Mutual, we don't hold minimums. That's not the case for every financial professional. You know, your guys at Merrill and Morgan, they're gonna have that $250K minimum. I pretty much any professional at Northwestern Mutual, though, they're gonna be able to open you accounts for as little as $50.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're like, hey, I just want some guidance, an advisor can definitely help you in that scenario on what's the right fit, why is that the right fit, you know, what I have lots of clients who are like, I don't want to invest in that at all. When war broke out, I had clients be like, I don't want anything that has anything to do with Russia in my portfolio. Right? I have clients that are like, I don't want anything that has to do with fossil fuel in my portfolio. And so that's how we go and invest for them then. So honestly, speaking with an advisor can be really helpful because they can help you pick the right thing for you.
Thank you.
Great.
Absolutely.
Do we have any other questions?
Mhm.
Diane.
Hi, I wanted to just say, I'm retired and didn't really prepare for retirement in the way that I wish I had. I came from a family, retirement wasn't anything anybody talked about or prepared for. You just worked till you couldn't work anymore, you know, that kind of thing. Very little saving, all of that. Didn't really understand. Whenever I heard a financial planner, I just thought, well, they're going to cost money. And so I won't talk to anybody because, you know, I don't have that much money to invest. Nobody will be interested. So I liked hearing you say the minimum in some instances could be $50 that you have to play with, and you can have someone advise you. I didn't understand the difference between a fiduciary, what a fiduciary was in terms of, and especially when linked to a large organization like Northwestern Mutual. Could you talk a little bit about that so that, you know, again, fear factor? I had fear that had been in my head about this and kept me from taking care of myself. And I don't know if anyone else is in situations like this, but understanding what a fiduciary was and that they're on my side, my support, and will take me, they're not working for their institution kind of thing. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So there's like a whole kind of broad thing when it comes to fiduciary. The short and tall of it is you are doing what is in the best interest of the client, no matter what. Right. Whether that means like, I personally will do, if that means I'm working with a different company outside of Northwestern Mutual, I'm not captive. I'll work with somebody other than Northwestern Mutual. If we're mixing and matching, we might mix and match. I have clients like that. We work on a couple of different platforms and then bring them together on one visual platform for them, right? But the biggest part, if you see the word fiduciary, that means they're required to do what's in my best interest, or they could lose their ability to do what they do.
Mhm. It's
Right.
very serious.
Mhm.
It's no joke. If somebody accused me of not being a fiduciary, I could lose everything I've worked for, right? But being a fiduciary means I can put my head down and sleep at night and not worry about, oh my God, is that right? I know I did the right thing, right? I have taken on some clients where I'm like, oh no, how did this make its way through compliance, right? Because their advisor weren't fiduciaries. But the biggest piece of that is they're required to do what is in your best interest.
And I can,
And you,
yeah. Sorry, Megan, go ahead. I thought you were done.
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Also, when you think about cost of things, there are advisors who charge a fee, send you out to do the homework on your own. Those are usually your RIAs, your registered investment advisors, which means they're going to look at a plan for you and then send you out in the world to complete things on your own. Most of my clients don't want to do that. Every once in a while, you get an engineer and they're just like, I can figure out how to get 1/100% off of this cheaper than you, right? And I would rather write you a check and you tell me what to do. Like, all right, cool, great, wonderful. But that's rarely the course my clients want to take. My clients typically want to take a space where I'm in the game with them. We're in the same boat, right? So most of the time we work in a space where if we help you implement things, whatever company we implement them with, they're going to pay us for implementing at their house. But that's also what's nice about the fact that we're not tied, like we can use any house we want. So how much we get paid doesn't really matter because anybody could pay us. So we get to pick whatever is the best option for you. On the other side of that, right, is if you lose money, I lose money as your advisor. If you make money, I make money as your advisor. So we've got skin in this game together. I'm financially tied to you. I would love to think that everybody in the world does what they do for altruistic reasons, right? That's not always the case. But this is just a second layer of honesty. If you have somebody who works in the capacity that you're not writing a check to them, plus they're a fiduciary, like that's the top tier of making sure what's in your best interest.
Yeah.
I
We did
absolutely
have one
love that.
comment. Sorry, Julie, didn't mean to
Oh,
cut
no,
you
go
off.
ahead, Amanda. Go right ahead.
Okay. Megan, we did have one comment about, I think it was going back to mutual funds. I'm concerned that many mutual funds that may invest in oil and mining, there is an option called ESG investing out there. We can touch on a little bit. I know we're getting close to time, but it basically stands for environmental, social, and governance. So what it means is different companies have to hit certain criterias in order to be considered an ESG investment. And usually it's things like they're helping the environment, or they've implemented certain rules or regulations or things of that nature. And there's several mutual funds out there that are ESG based. So you can know that, hey, I'm investing in something that is encouraging companies to be more aware of their environmental, social, and governance in this world. Megan, you may have something to add, but just wanted to address that comment because
Yeah. And pretty much every platform is going to offer an ESG option. And you can dig into their what's in that mutual fund. Because there will be certain mutual funds that aren't ESG that don't necessarily have oil and mining in them. But ESG is really probably going to be the best route to make sure that that's not in there. And then you can go through but pretty much everybody has an ESG option.
That's great. I love ending on that. Those two things, honesty and you having skin in the game, but making sure that, you're taking care of your people and they're taking care of you. And ESGs, that's great. That's good stuff. I really we're gonna have to wrap it up just because we could talk about this stuff forever. And I just love that you guys come and do this for us, because it does make me feel a little safer and start to feel like I can do more. And I just would like to do a big shout out. Thank you so much, Amanda and Megan. If there's anything that you ladies would like to put into the chat so that people could take it home. And I know I put your contact info, but if you'd like to also put the sheet in that has your contact info, that'd be great so that people can go ahead and reach out. And I just want to thank everybody for coming, and especially Amanda and Megan. It's been a really brilliant and educational and informational evening. So thank you very, very much.